You know, that's like a wind up. I gotta like wind up to do that. It's like I'm like, yeah.
One point I thought maybe I should try that, and I'm going, no, I can't do that.
Oh man, I love doing that. I absolutely love doing that. Oh shit.
You should. We all love hearing you do that. Yeah, exactly. Okay, 9 and all the rest of it. You got a good voice.
Oh, shit. Thank you, brother. How are you? How the hell are you doing? I know we were talking about
My fault.
Resident Evil
My fault.
before. I was like, "Are you ready to go?" He's like, "Yeah, whatever." Oh
Well, it
shit.
started off with talking about Lord of the Rings and went on from there, and I'm chatty tonight. Sorry. My fault. I owe you 2 minutes.
Oh crap. Oh man. No, obviously we were talking Lord of the Rings this morning. I've had some crap in my chest and I haven't felt really that great, but I love Lord of the Rings and as much passion as I can give you guys. That's what I'm going to give you because I love it. If I could, if God came down from heaven and said you can only have one IP, Loki, that's it. It's all you can have. It's not going to be Star Wars. It's not going to be Star Trek. It's going to be Lord of the Rings. Give me all the books. Give me all the movies. Give me the cartoons. There and back again. A Hobbit's Tale. You know, I'll take the music from the cartoons. Hell, I'll take it all. Give me Lord of the Rings or give me death.
In all honesty, it would just because I'm so passionate about it, even though you guys don't know, it would for me it would have to be one of my two IPs. It would either have to be the Evolution or Blood, which I sorry, I love what I've created.
Then
It
you
sounds
should.
narcissistic, but I love what I've created.
No, you should. You should absolutely positively should. There is there is no narcissism in that. Not at all. You love what you've created, and you've created this badass IP that will stand the test of time.
Well, I hope so. You ready? I am
Oh,
ready to hear this so I can get refreshed for next week for part 3.
Well, that's why I went ahead and told part 1 again because I was like, man, there's going to be people out there that have no idea what's going on. So
we have waited over a year for this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the first stories I told on 7 Kinds of Mischief when we started doing horror was Journal of a Psychopath. So yeah, we're gonna do part 2 tonight, and we're gonna do part 3 next week. I can't wait. I'm gonna be recording part 1 after this. I want to get it absolutely perfect. No noises in the background, no nothing. I want to get it absolutely perfect. I may even throw some sound effects in there. I don't know. I don't know exactly how far I want to go with this, but we might have some background music. We might
go
have
as professional as you can. That's all I can say.
Make it worth your while. I love the old Star Wars audiobooks because you had like the blaster sound effects, and when like Luke pulled his lightsaber out and ignited, you heard that, and then it went into the music. You know, Luke fought with his lightsaber with and I loved that. I love that. That's why I love the Star Wars audiobooks back in the day because it had all of that. It wasn't just someone talking; it was like sound effects and
things that draw you in.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. What do you got for us tonight?
Oh, you know me. My light reading is really bizarre for a lot of other people. And I was thinking one of these days I may actually go back and go with each individual of these Illuminati exiles, even one who claimed to be one of their prime goddesses, you know, all the different stuff that I've talked about. And a lot of them have been debunked. But my thing is with them, after you go through that kind of trauma, you're going to be crazy and make things up. Like one guy said he was supposed to be the reincarnation of Christ, but some of their facts add up. So it just, you know, I was going back over some of that stuff. But then I decided, what the heck, let's go over MK Ultra again. And I found something that I kind of knew. It was nice to be refreshed. There is a list of, because MK Ultra is a CIA project. It was designed or set up to be able to manipulate people through various different means, coercion, different stuff. They had mind control, drug use. I'm trying. Some of you may know, and it's got a wild name. In MK Ultra, they have a ton of these sub projects, almost 150 of them that we know of. They were released to the public because these were done in the 50s. But I wanted to get a little bit more in depth, not on this particular one, but just sub project number 3 was called Midnight Climax. And what that basically was a drug-induced honeypot. They had big people, the names are redacted, who they would lure in with ladies of the night and would lace their drinks with LSD, film them having relationships, original blackmail. I wonder where Epstein learned all of this. And when they're in this whacked out state, they would either fill them full of misinformation or drag out what information they could. And this was, the report says from 1953 to 56, but we know darn well it even continues today. And that was against US citizens, which is beyond the, any of you know what the CIA was supposed to do? It's supposed to be for foreign works, not domestic. And yet they were doing it. I gave Loki a picture. This is one of the things. There's several different of these sub projects of MK Ultra. This one is a weird one. It starts off with sub project 4 as 15, 19, several of them for different funding, release of information, doing stuff. But this was discovered in 2009. This is actually an official manual. He'll show you the picture in a sec. Here it is. Sub-project 4, 15, and 19 are to fund the contractor, a magician, to write a manual on the various aspects of the magician's art, which could be useful in covert operations. The result was this manual, the CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. All right. Well, I want to get into how this came up. Some of this is going to be redundant of things that I talked about before. It's going to be on a basic level. Then we'll get into a little bit more and tie things together. Even with when Mike and I did this show a couple weeks ago. All right, there's no doubt that the government gets up to some strange dealings, research and experiments, and top secret programs have always drawn to them tales of suspense, mystery, and conspiracies. One of the strangest stories concerns an offshoot of mind control programs run by the United States, which by some accounts branched off into realms of the supernatural and the occult. Perhaps no other secret military project has been as talked about or as wrapped in conspiracy theories, as the CIA's Project MK Ultra, launched in the 1950s. I guarantee it was earlier than that. By the United States Central Intelligence Agency, the project was an extensive program looking into the development and applications of numerous methods of mind control, and often using rather inhumane, unethical, and frankly illegal. Actually, I said that wrong. I think I said the CIA was meant for foreign governments, but it's meant for, you guys know. Unethical and frankly illegal methods such as using unwitting human guinea pigs and forms of psychological torture, including sensory deprivation, verbal abuse, and others. And when this came out, I will talk about it. I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. MK Ultra focused heavily on trying to alter and manipulate human mental states of consciousness, often with the help of generous portions of hallucinogenic chemicals and drugs such as barbiturates, amphetamines, mescaline, psilocybin, scopamine, cannabis, and LSD in an effort to create a drug that could be used for mind control purposes and to develop a perfect truth serum and other substances that would dramatically alter the human psyche, including alleged efforts to create a true Manchurian candidate, type of assassin or spy that could be activated when needed. They also looked into various other forms of mind control and alterations of the human psyche, such as hypnosis and the use of suboral frequencies blasts to erase memory, and a microwave device for implanting thoughts in the enemy minds, among many others. It's amazing how it seems like whenever there's a political agenda needed to be passed, all of a sudden we have some psycho who goes on a shooting spree. I'll let you put two and two together with that. We've talked about that before. The program went on for over a decade, and that's what they claim, and it's gone on a lot longer than that under a different name and still continues today. That's not part of this article, but I'm going to keep reading. Over a decade in total secrecy, and this was no small operation, with such mind control research being carried out at an estimated 80 different institutions, ranging from universities to pharmaceutical companies to private, catch that, pharmaceutical companies, you think they gave up that stuff, to private companies, as well as hospitals and prisons, which provide plenty of potential test subjects, some of whom purportedly died during the experiments. The scope of it all was huge, and the CIA was very good at obfuscating that any of this was going on at all. It was not until 1957 or 75, dyslexia, that the Church Committee of the United States Congress brought this sinister program out of the shadows, and even then, most of the top secret documents pertaining to it had been destroyed, which is against the law, in 1973 by the CIA Director Richard Helms, making investigation into Project MK Ultra difficult, its full extent hidden in darkness. And the CIA should have ended before then because of all the laws they were breaking that came out in the Church Committee, and yet it still continues. MK Ultra was a vast, sprawling warren of weird experiments and strange studies, and it actually served as an umbrella for 150 research subprojects. That's what I was looking into, is this subprojects, operating under them with funding from the CIA. One of these numerous projects was called MK Search, launched in 1964, which was a joint operation with the U.S. Army Chemical Corps, primarily tasked with research and development of various substances that could be used to incapacitate the enemy, including biological, chemical, and radioactive materials. The subproject of MK Search was called MK Often, also sometimes referred to as MK Chickwit, which sought to test the behavioral effects of different drugs on animals and humans, and which mostly operated at Holmesburg State Prison in Philadelphia in 1967 to 1973. I talked about Holmesburg a while ago. According to reports, the project supposedly ostensibly pursued compounds for stimulating heart attacks, producing irrational or violent behavior of psychotic states, and otherwise disturbing a person's psyche. But it has been alleged to have been involved in far more bizarre realms. Now, just as a side note, a lot of you older folks like me will know this too. During the church, they had developed the heart attack gun, and they're talking about they were trying to stimulate heart attacks. This was actually an effective tool that they had at the time. It was a pistol that shot something into someone's skin. It would leave almost no trace and cause a heart attack. It was an effective way to assassinate anybody. Okay, I'm gonna go. According to some sources, MK Often went beyond the mere research of mind control and incapacitation of enemies. and branched out into the world of black magic, witchcraft, and the occult. The accusations was first put forth by British investigative journalist and author Gordon Thomas, who wrote in 2007 book Secrets and Lies, and who claims that a Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, chief of the CIA's Technical Services Branch, and also known as the Black Sorcerer, due to his expertise with poisons, used the program to explore the world of black magic and harness the forces of darkness, and challenge the concept that the inner research of the mind are beyond reach. We've talked a lot about the dark arts. You wonder why it was integrated in, is because these people knew. And for the religious people, and again, it's for the religious, non-religious, you can take it or leave it, what have you, but there is evidence that these dark arts actually do have some form of power. It doesn't mean that it's better than the light power, but there are actual documented cases where they're successful at using dark magics or evils. Okay. To this end, people involved in the MK often purportedly met with, consulted, studied, or employed numerous mystic and occultists, including fortune tellers, palm readers, clairvoyants, astrologists, mediums, psychics, practitioners of voodoo and witchcraft, black magicians, demonologists, Satanists, and even a monsieur in charge of the exorcism of the Catholic Archdiocese of New York. The program also alleged pursued magical rituals for possible military use. That actually, a side note, I can't remember the show because I got rid of Netflix, but it had a bunch of little shorts. Most of them were animated, and they had I believe it was a Russian military group in the snow that had performed a black ritual, and all these demons from hell came out. It was about the military group trying to stop it. I know, sounds weird. It was kind of a cool program. According to Thomas, the CIA employed 3 astrologers for telling the future, as well as 2 palm readers whose abilities were looked at for their use in intelligence activities, a sorcerer from Houston named Sybil Leek, and various other psychics and occultists. In addition to Thomas, another journalist and researcher, Alex Constantine, also wrote of these arcane pursuits carried out by the program, claiming that the CIA was interested in starting religious cults, and get this, we've talked about a couple of these, such as the People's Temple, haven't done that one yet, of Jonestown, or Johnstown. We're going to Jonestown. I can't speak tonight. I'm sorry. We're going to get into that. I kind of covered it a little bit because of the CIA agent that was there and the weapons grade LSD that was delivered by the CIA. So there's proof of that connection. The Church of Set, which we haven't done, and what I did with Mike is the Process Church of the Final Judgment. The Finders, which we haven't done, and others, in order to look into mind control and alterations of human behavior. And that they also helped set up a course of black magic, demonology, and witchcraft at the University of South Carolina as a sort of social laboratory. This course apparently delved into all manner of occult and magical rituals and was carefully monitored by the CIA behavioral scientists. Often a researcher named Peter Lavenda has also claimed that MK often was involved in everything from seances and witchcraft to remote viewing and exotic drugs. Okay, the remote viewing doesn't belong in there. That's a whole category in its own, because it has to deal with things that aren't necessarily black magic. I know they tied in the black magic and the drugs, the Satanists, but it's a whole nother science. But either way, another piece to the puzzle of why a lot of things really shouldn't be trusted in our world, because the powers that be have been lying to us. the CIA has been doing medical experiments on United States citizens and other places, including Africa, various places, unbeknownst to the citizens, which is against the Nuremberg Code, kind of like what's going on now with whiskey shots. I like that. Whiskey shots. That's a good way to hide it. So, yeah, CIA should be done with, should be over with, doing really bad things, including a manual on how to do black magic. That's what I had for you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for telling us the evils of men.
And Darkside Doug says, never willingly drink the Kool-Aid.
Absolutely. And very few of them did. At Jonestown, in reality is they said everybody drank the Kool-Aid. Most of them, they found injection sites in their back. They were assassinated or killed.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Hunting.
An happy day. An happy day to you, Abby Dinosaur. Abby Dinosaur 8000 says, happy day to you, Loki, and Adega Outlaw.
Happy day, happy Dino. All right, let's get on to the good stuff.
Dave Bob says the CIA would force feed it to you.
Yep.
All right, so last week we did part 1 of Journal of a Psychopath, high school. Today we are going to do part 2, Journal of a Psychopath, university. So, and I'm going to be recording these later and possibly adding certain things to the yeah. Anyway, I was in my sophomore year at the university. Past 2 years had gone exactly as I'd planned. My status as a foster child ensured that my tuition would be covered. Dean and Sarah had followed through with their offer of adoption and accepted me as their son. As such, they provided me with modest allowance, assuring that my pantry remained filled and my needs were met. I had a nice computer, new cell phone, all the school supplies I would need. I also always had a place to stay during the summer or the holidays. Although I preferred to spend my time alone, I provided Dean and Sarah with just enough interaction and gratification to keep them bending over backwards for me. Life was good. Until Dustin, that is. My previous year, I had the fortune of being assigned a roommate that rarely spoke. He minded his own business. We never even had a real conversation. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember the kid's name. It was perfect. This year, I had been assigned a very different roommate. Dustin was a special kind of idiot who felt the need to be the center of attention. My apartment was always crammed with similar idiots who can't quite seem to manage 5 seconds without speaking. They were always talking, shouting, and blaring pathetic pop music written by musicians who had the vocabulary skill of dirty-minded first graders. Dustin and his group of idiots replicated the essence of their favorite songs by getting sloppy drunk and bragging about banging hoes and bitches. I was disgusted that my generation could succumb to such ludicrous culture. At first, I thought they were just drinking. I shut myself in my room or the library as much as I possibly could, ignoring the idiots. It didn't take me long to realize, though, that they were consuming a little more than just alcohol. Every time Dustin walked near, a waft of burnt marijuana would insult my nose and soothe my apartment and reeked of it every evening. As if that wasn't bad enough, one Saturday morning, I woke up to find the remnants of their Friday night festivities. People I didn't even know laying on the couch and on the floor, snoring like hibernated idiots. Their mess of crunched aluminum beer cans and burnt joints, along with the aroma of stale cigarettes, gave the appearances as a herd of homeless addicts had spent the night in my apartment. On the coffee table, there were smears of fine white powder, fingerprints whooshing about, a small white straw from a fast food place laying on the ground. It wasn't hard to determine that these idiots had done plenty of coke the night before. Now, I don't care if you smoke weed. I don't care if you do white. As long as it poses no threat to my well-being. Naturally, if Dustin and these idiots got caught with drugs, it would come down on me too. Guilt by association, as they say. Obviously, I couldn't accept such a risk in my life or to my goals. I would need to confront this idiot about this. I walked into his room, kicking away beer cans that clanged across the floor. In the midst of his room, which resembled a landfill, was his bed. Scattered bed sheets and comforter gave way to a cluster of tangled limbs. I pulled the sheets off to find Dustin in his underwear and his girlfriend naked beside him. Ripping off his smelly, nasty sheets did nothing to stir this idiot from his drug-induced hibernation. So I gave him a nudge. Nothing. Dustin, wake your fucking ass up and clean this shit up. Dustin didn't stir. My patience was already thin, but each and every second that I had to exist inside this bullshit landfill made me even more agitated. I grabbed him by his foot and ripped him out of bed. The first thing to hit the floor was his face, which practically bounced off the cheap gray carpet. "What the hell, dude?" said Dustin, finally somewhat conscious. His hands clutched his head in obvious pain from the hangover, only made worse from hitting his face on the floor. His palms worked their way up to his eyes as he rubbed them and tried opening his eyelids. "Get the fuck up and get these idiots out of my apartment and clean this fucking place up. If I wanted to live in a trailer park filled with trashy trailer park idiots, I would." "Get the hell out of here, asshole. Quit being such a little bitch," he told me, looking up with squinty eyes as if someone was shining a flashlight directly in his face. I could see the headache in his eyes, showing clear signs of a huge hangover. I knew how to handle a guy with a huge hangover. I headed to the kitchen. With a squeak, I opened one of the faded brown kitchen cabinets and grabbed the old discolored pot and its matching frying pan. Holding them there by their black plastic handles, I headed back into the room, where he was already back in bed snoring. I flipped the light on, walked across the room, taking care to step on his dirty-ass laundry. As I pulled the frayed white cord of the crooked blinds, the sunshine penetrated into the dark room. Both Dustin and his girlfriend reacted by pulling the blankets over their head to shield their eyes from the penetrating rays. Two major symptoms characterize a heavy hangover: severe headache and extreme sensitivity to bright lights and loud sounds. I walked over to Dustin's side of the bed, holding the pot and pan over his head, and started banging the shit out of him as loud as I could. Dustin reacted to the obnoxious clangs as if he were a vampire being attacked by the sun, showing that the sound caused him pain. I found myself enjoying his reaction as he grabbed his head with both hands, as if that would do anything to subside the pain now pounding in his dehydrated and intoxicated brain. He rolled around like an epileptic animal, shouting curse words that were barely audible over my continuous clangs of pot and pan. Finally, the sound and pain became too much. Dustin threw off the covers and jumped to his feet. He made one small stumble with his back foot, demonstrating that he was still drunk. He behaved like a wounded animal with one goal: to make the pain stop. The inevitable physical violence now came from Dustin, as I threw a joke of a punch at me. I smacked his hand away with the pan. He swore in pain as his knuckles collided with the metal. He didn't learn his lesson the first time, so he threw a second punch at me, which ended up with the same result. This time, he lost his balance and fell over his drunk self, his face landing on his bleeding knuckles. I once again started clanging the pot and pan over his head, only angering him further as he tried to scramble back to his feet. I kicked him with a push kick, knocking him backwards into his cheap black nightstand. Now I knew Dustin was a wannabe gangster, but even with that, I did not expect what he did next. He jumped back to his feet and opened the sliding drawer of his nightstand, and he pulled out a compact-sized pistol and put it directly up against my head. Needless to say, I stopped clanging the pot and pan. Dustin stood there, his face bright red from anger and pain, holding the gun in his shaky-ass hand with his finger on the trigger. There was no doubt in my mind that a kid as irresponsible as Dustin would keep a gun chambered. So I knew that a trigger pull would mean a bullet to my head. He stood there in silence for a moment, as I stared at the silver circle of the barrel surrounded by matte black slide. Dustin's expression softened a little bit as he realized the gravity of what he was about to do. A fool like him wouldn't be able to pull off a clean murder. I could see it in his eyes. I could see that he understood that pulling that trigger would mean life in prison. By now, everyone in the apartment was awake and aware of what was going on. They stood awkwardly outside the bedroom door, not sure what to do, now that the ringleader of their little circus had pulled out a gun. Every part of me wanted to rip the gun out of his hand and kill him right then and right there. It's actually a fairly simple maneuver if you know what you're doing. I may have even been within my legal rights to do so. But I didn't need my name on a police record, nor the time I would have to spend in court. The last thing I wanted to do was bring any unnecessary attention on myself, particularly not with law enforcement. So I chose a more tactful way out. I'm not okay with you bringing drugs into my apartment, I told him calmly, but assertively, as to not stir any irrational reaction from the idiot with a gun. I don't care what you do with your own life, but it's not okay for you to risk my future. What are you gonna do, bitch? Go snitching? He spat at me, still pointing the gun at my forehead. The answer was yes. I would go to the police if I needed to, but right now, I needed to de-escalate the situation, not give him a reason to shoot me. No, I told him. As long as you keep the drugs out of my apartment, I'll never speak of this again. Well, guess what? You don't get to tell me what to do, bitch. You go snitch me out, I'll make sure to tell him that you're a part of this whole operation, Dustin said, gesturing with his gun hand. I couldn't help but notice the way that he had to act tough in front of his friends. It was almost comical to see that happen. Matter of fact, I already have drugs hidden somewhere in your shit to make sure that if I go down, you go down with me. I really didn't believe that Dustin had the intelligence nor the foresight to hide drugs away just in case. But I couldn't be certain. And in the meantime, I had to let Dustin believe that he had won. All right, Dustin, I said, making sure to look real scared. That's what he wants. Think that people fear him. I promise I won't say a word. You win, Dustin. Good, he said, finally removing his finger from the trigger. Instead of lowering the gun, however, he hit me with it. Cold, hard metal of the gun slide slammed into my face, just to the side of my left eye. I fell to the ground, allowing Dustin to feel superior for a moment. Took everything I had to hide my anger and keep my scared expression on. But I managed. Next time, I'll fucking kill you, bitch, he said, before telling me to get out. I went to my room, locked the door behind me. As I held a paper towel to my bleeding face, I couldn't help but smile. It had been far too long since I had a legitimate reason, an excuse, to feel that rush of enjoyment from too long years ago. Little did Dustin understand the war he had just started. I would never allow a simple-minded fool to risk my future. He most definitely didn't understand that he could not win. I always win. I kept to myself, mostly in my room, for the remainder of the weekend. It seemed that the events of Saturday morning had at least put the clowns off enough that they took their Saturday night substance circus elsewhere. Meanwhile, I thought back to that brief conversation with Dustin, and there was one particular statement he had made that stood out. "I'll make sure to tell them you're a part of this operation," he said. Operation was the one word that gave it all away. It told me that he wasn't just an idiot on drugs. No, he was the dealer. While I admire entrepreneurship, no matter how stupid, I couldn't let his operation affect my future. I knew what I had to do. Monday morning, I left my apartment for class at the normal time. Instead of going to class, however, I waited for Dustin to leave from a stone park bench across the road. We had class at the same time, but he was almost always late getting out of bed and undoubtedly showed up to class late. Finally, about 15 minutes after class should have begun, I watched his greasy brown head walk away from our apartment building. This meant that I had several hours before he would be home. I re-entered the apartment, where I went to my bathroom and retrieved my pair of teal latex cleaning gloves, the very same ones I wore when I killed Brian. I put those on carefully, ensuring that I didn't touch the hands nor fingers of the gloves. After wiggling my hands into their respective positions, I was ready to investigate. I slowly entered Dustin's room, careful not to accidentally move anything out of place. Not that it would have been noticed. Dustin was a pig. Stepping over a heap of dirty laundry, I made my way to his nightstand first. As I softly pulled on the faded gold knob, the squeaky drawer slid out, revealing the gun. At least he wasn't stupid enough to take it to class with him. But I'd make him regret it nonetheless. He had one extra magazine in the drawer along with a black spring-loaded knife. Also in the drawer was a picture of him and his girlfriend. I guess even wannabe gangsters have a soft spot. I think I'm one of the few of the lucky people who don't have soft spots. Soft spots are weak spots. Next, I made my way around his unkept bed to the closet, which had one of the sliding doors already open, revealing haphazardly hung clothing. I could see in the corner a stack of shoeboxes laying covered by a few jackets and hoodies in a feeble attempt to appear discreet. I knew that those boxes had what I was looking for in them. I carefully moved the smelly jackets out of the way, taking note of the exact order in which the jackets were placed. Inside the top orange shoebox was just some papers, nothing important. In the second box, I found a multicolored glass pipe atop 3 large bags of pot. Quite a bit, if you ask me, but I'm no expert. I set that box aside and opened up the third box. Jackpot. In this box, I found a large bag of white powder. The bag was marked with a B, undoubtedly referring to Blow, the street name. This seemed like an awful lot. I wouldn't take an expert to realize that the bag had to be worth thousands of dollars. Next to the large white bag were a dozen or so pocket-sized zip bags, sitting on top of a small scale, filled with carefully pre-portioned doses. This confirmed the suspicion I had had ever since Dustin had accidentally used the word operation. Dustin was selling. And by the looks of it, Dustin was dealing quite a bit of both. This was something I definitely couldn't be okay with in my apartment. I moved the large bag to the side to find what else might be lurking. Underneath the white was a transparent zip-up bag of small white tablet-shaped pills, probably 40 or 50. The bag was labeled CPT Cody with a Sharpie. Tablets had the letter M on one side and the number 30 embedded on the other side. I didn't know what those were, as I've never been savvy with pills, but I would definitely do research to figure it out. For now, I had everything that I needed to make a tentative plan. After putting everything back precisely how I had found it, I left. I went to the library and searched through dozens of thick hardcover textbooks, sifting through pages still stained with highlighter and crusty copy spills from the previous students. A simple internet search would have been easy, but I couldn't risk any chance of being traced. After hours of straining my eyes on the tiny print from textbooks, I found what I was looking for. I knew Dustin was getting involved with some serious stuff when I found the white, but this information showed an even darker truth. M30 are prescriptions for oxycodone opiates. The name Captain Cody reveals that the pills were something else entirely. Thanks to a criminal justice and enforcement textbook, I found that the small unidentified tablets that I had found were likely not oxycodone, but fentanyl, a synthetic opiate, over 50 times stronger than morphine. According to this textbook, it's common for people like Dustin to mask them as oxycodone. For one reason or another, the lethal dose of fentanyl is only 2-3 milligrams. A smile crept across my face from my quiet corner in the library. It was time to try something new. I had a plan. I spent the next week going about business as usual, quietly staying out of Dustin's way but watching intently. Every day after class, Dustin would come to the apartment and disappear into his room for a couple minutes before reemerging with his dirty forest green backpack. He would return anywhere between 90 minutes to 2 hours later and disappear into his room again. It wasn't hard to tell that this time frame was when Dustin was doing his deliveries. His weird girlfriend would now show up while I was gone. Apparently he'd given her a key. Lucky me. I wondered, though, if Dustin knew that she was sneaking into his stash. As soon as she got to the apartment, she would duck inside his room for a few minutes and come back out to get a soda, a root beer. So every time I noted a smear of white underneath her left nostril. Although she was a cokehead, at least she was smart enough to use Dustin to get what she wanted. Wednesday night would be the night to finally put my problems behind me. Again, I skipped out of my morning class. The class was humanities, the single most boring class anybody could ever take. Spend hours reading worthless poetry, then listen to some idiot try to sound sophisticated about it. I hated it, but I only needed a C to get credit. Instead, I waited for Dustin to leave. As soon as he had left for the day, I entered his room and went for the box. I was surprised to find out just how much business the kid had been doing. The shoe boxes had been drained quite a bit, but the cash box was definitely more full. His little operation was successful, but he was sloppy and would most definitely get caught if he were allowed to continue. I wasn't willing to be caught. Sarah had given me a mortar and pestle before I moved out, and this was the first time that I would be using it. After covering my nose and mouth with a thick cloth, I dropped several little pills into the thick granite bowl and used the sturdy stone pestle to crush them. The grinding sound wasn't pleasant, but it reminded me of nails on a chalkboard. Still, I continued to crush and grind, adding a few pills at a time as the contents of the bowl slowly turned into a chalky powder. After about 20 minutes of consistent grinding, I felt as though I had the right amount. With gloved hands, I compared the consistency of the chalky fentanyl to that of the coke. Fentanyl was a bit thicker and more of an off-white comparatively, but I knew that if I mixed them well enough, it would go unnoticed. I removed the small portion bags from the box. Carefully, I emptied the contents into a small cup where I mixed it all together, calculating about the correct amount of fentanyl for one lethal overdose. After I was satisfied with the mix, I put the now laced white back into each baggie. After mixing more fentanyl with the remaining larger bag, keeping to the same ratio, everything was ready to go. Put everything back into Dustin's closet and sanitized my gloves and equipment with bleach and dish soap. Now all I had to do was wait. Dustin arrived back to the apartment on schedule, quickly ducking into his room and leaving 5 minutes later with his ugly backpack to go sell his drugs. Soon after, his girlfriend came in, and as planned, went right into Dustin's room. I watched from the crack in my door as she emerged a few minutes later to retrieve her root beer. She was smiling awkwardly and did a weird sort of twirl towards the sofa before plopping herself on a plump cushion. I watched her head would drop slightly and whip back up as she tried to keep herself awake. The nods became more pronounced, and finally, she laid her head back and closed her eyes, giving in the deep relaxation effect of the powerful opiate. I emerged from my room to analyze her condition. Her head lay back with her mouth open and arms sprawled towards her side as if she had merged with the sofa. She was completely out. I poked at her a few times to make sure she would not easily wake before positioning her in such a way to keep her airway open. I needed her alive. Got the rest of my preparations ready quickly but carefully as I waited for Dustin's arrival. I paced the room while lightly snapping my fingers in a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I couldn't wait to execute the remainder of my plan. I started to feel anxious about it. I felt as though I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know enough about what I was doing. They could be unpredictable, these drugs. I had an easy backup plan for the girl if she died, but it would be messy if she woke up too early. Finally, I heard the jingle of keys outside the apartment and the subsequent click of the deadbolt sliding into the unlocked position. After the front door was closed, Dustin turned on the lights and froze at the sight in front of him. I had his gun pointed at him from behind his couch, just behind his unconscious girlfriend. In my other hand, I held Dustin's knife to her neck. I wouldn't advise doing anything stupid, Dustin, I told him calmly. His eyes widened as he grasped the situation, and worry tainted his usually smug face, exposing one of his greatest weaknesses, love. Oh, he most certainly loved this girl. What did you do to her? Dustin asked through clenched jaws, frightened and slowly putting his hands up as if I was arresting him. I knocked her out after she threatened to frame me the same way you threatened me. I lied, gesturing with the gun. I'm not going to hurt either of you, as long as we can both agree to part ways peacefully, and neither of us will go to the police. I think it's clear that if either of us gets turned in, we'll rat each other out. Now, please, take a seat. I pointed with the gun to the chair on the opposite side of the coffee table to his girlfriend and myself. Per my request, he walked over and sat down begrudgingly. If you hurt her, I'll kill you, Dustin said with a clenched jaw. Don't worry. I fully intend for her to be unharmed, I told Dustin, being honest for the first time since his arrival. Now help yourself to a line. I want you to be relaxed. Keeping the knife at his girlfriend's throat, I pointed to the 3 lines of tainted white that I had prepared for him. Why the hell would I take a line at a time like this? Just to make sure that if you call the police, you have to tell them that you're on drugs. I'm trying to draw a truce, Dustin, so nobody gets screwed. Dustin grabbed up the rolled up bill that I had prepared, leaned over the first line, and with his nose over his free nostril, he snorted. The white powder sucked through the dollar bill straw like a vacuum sucking up a flower. He took a deep breath, looking more relaxed, and looked back at me. I'm going to need you to tell me what drugs you hid in my room and where, I told him. Dustin comprehended the demand, revealing that he had indeed hidden drugs somewhere in my stuff. I was impressed that he was smart enough to actually have done that. I taped weed in your floor vent, Dustin admitted. Excellent. Thank you for telling me that, I told Dustin with a gentle smile. Now please, take another line so we can talk about what's going to happen. I smiled as Dustin bent over to snort the second line. The first line had only a small amount of fentanyl in it, but the second was half and half. It was just over a lethal dose by my calculations. Dustin closed his eyes and shook his head. I'm not sure how much resistance he had, but it seemed to hit him hard. Now here's the plan, I said, keeping Dustin's mind distracted. As he looked up to me, I could see the black pupils narrowing with his brown eyes, signaling that the drug taking rapid effect was working. I'm going to move out, and you're going to take over the full lease willingly. I won't say anything about the drugs, and you won't say anything about this little incident. Sound good to you? Whatever, man. Just take the knife off her, Dustin said as he rubbed his eyes. I could see that he was already fighting the urge to let his head drop. Perfect. Take the last line and we'll shake off. I don't want it, man. Something feels weird with this, Dustin said as he started to sway ever so lightly. Take the line, Dustin, so I can let her go. Shaking his head, Dustin bent down and snorted the final line. This, my friends, this was pure. Probably enough to kill 2 people. Dustin put one hand on his head and grabbed the table with the other hand in an attempt to steady himself. His chest moved angrily as his breathing quickly became labored and loud. I removed the knife from this girl's neck and stood up fully to watch Dustin be completely taken over by his own drugs. He leaned on the table as his diaphragm now contracted heavily and violently as each breath rasped like a snoring bulldog. He made quite the effort to look up at me, but his arm gave out under his own weight and his face slammed into the table with a thud. His butt still sat in the chair, but his face now rested on the coffee table. I felt a surge of euphoria come over me as I watched him struggle a few more times to pick up his head. He only made it a few inches each time before his head thudded back on the table. I couldn't help but laugh out loud as I thought back to when he told me, "Next time I'll kill you." If only he knew just what type of person he had said that to. The fool thought himself superior, who could stomp all over me. But I proved him to be nothing but a pawn in my way. Bubbly white foam now appeared from his open mouth, slowly drifting onto the table. The raspy breath had now turned to inconsistent choking and gurgling sounds, signaling respiratory failure. I took a seat and I watched eagerly as Dustin's body made involuntary seizure-like jerks. I wasn't sure if he had any consciousness remaining in that thick skull of his, but I sure hoped that it hurt and that he could feel every last second of pain. Finally, his breathing and seizing stopped altogether, and Dustin was completely motionless. His head was on the table, as was his left arm, but his right arm dangled down into his fingers, touching the gray carpet. I checked his pulse to verify that he was dead. There was nothing. I looked over at the girl, having completely forgotten about her in the moment. Her breathing had steadied, which was good. If she had died, I would have to be the one to discover the bodies. I retrieved the marijuana that Dustin had placed in my floor vent and checked the rest of the vents just to be sure. After replacing the gun and knife in Dustin's former nightstand, I took off my latex cleaning gloves and sanitized them one last time to make sure there would be no drug residue left. Finally, I crashed onto my bed and quickly fell asleep. Murder is hard work. I awoke to loud screaming coming from the living room. Dustin's girlfriend had finally woken up. I checked the clock to see that it was 12:23 a.m., which means Dustin had been dead for hours now. I took one deep breath before bursting out of the room to appear as if I was panicked. I saw Dustin's girlfriend leaning over him, trying to shake him awake, begging him through her obnoxious sobbing. "Oh my God, what happened?" I said loudly, acting shocked and scared. "I don't know," she said, sobbing desperately. "I think he took too much," she said. I'm sure at this point she knew deep down that he was dead, but perhaps in denial. I couldn't imagine that his body was still warm. "Did you call 911? I asked her, trying my best to remain panic-stricken. She shook her head as tears streamed down her face. I realized she was in no state to call, so I figured I would have to. 911, what's your emergency? Please help. I think my roommate OD'd on something. He's not moving," I half yelled over the phone, acting as though I was terrified and surprised. I gave the operator the address. After ensuring that help was on the way, she asked me to check for vitals. I went along with the situation in character of a scared young man and looked for a pulse, pretending like I was hoping to find one. Dustin was cold. He was obviously dead. The stiff muscles in his neck told me that rigor mortis had already started. Dustin's girlfriend now sat on his side, clutching his cold, dead hand, trying to grasp that her lover was dead. Couldn't understand why she was so shaken up. What did she expect? A happily fucking ever after with 3 cute kids and a white picket fence? Nonetheless, I gently pulled her away from the body as first responders arrived. The girl who I had never even talked to pulled me into an unexpected embrace, burying her face into my shoulder. I hated every disgusting second of her crying on me, but I fought off my impulse to push her away. I had to act like a normal person who had just found a dead body. The paramedics hadn't even tried to revive him. He was too far gone. I gave my statement to the police, making sure it appear as if I was badly shaken up by the event. I admitted that I had witnessed drugs being used by Dustin and his girlfriend, and told the story of how when I confronted him about it, he had pointed a loaded gun at me. I even let fake tears escape as I told the police how scared I was. Dustin might have killed me if I had told. In distress, Dustin's girlfriend, ironically her name was Sarah, completely backed my story, as she was there when the gun was pulled. She was obviously unconscious while I forced Dustin to overdose, so she thought he had done it to himself. She spilled the beans about the drug use, and that as well the drug dealing. She admitted to everything, completely incriminating herself and her friends. The investigation didn't last long, but over the next 5 days, more students had fentanyl overdoses after buying some of Dustin's white. Unfortunately, 2 of them were fatal. The blame for the deaths went straight to Dustin. It was determined that he had been the one who laced the white with fentanyl in order to have the best product on campus. In some deep reflection of my previous murder, I made some notes. Killing Dustin with the drugs was ultimately much cleaner, with far fewer forensic issues to worry about. All the blood from the stabbing was messy. You don't realize how much blood a person has until you stab them to death. That being said, stabbing Brian felt so much more satisfying. Something about looking into his eyes as I pushed the knife into his chest had left me with an itch that I'd never been able to scratch again. The only negative consequences for me is that the university sent me to trauma counseling, which meant that I had to keep up with the charade of having to be traumatized for a while. As expected, Dean and Sarah gave me massive amounts of sympathy over the whole thing, offering to pay expensive counseling, to which I politely refused. Instead, they quickly purchased me a lease for a different 1-bedroom apartment, where I would no longer need to have a roommate. This was perfect. I hated roommates. I couldn't risk killing them all. Sarah and Dean, so easily manipulated. And once again, I always win.
I couldn't risk killing them all.
And ladies and gentlemen, Journal of a Psychopath, University, Part 2, written by R.M. Staniforth.
Part 3 coming up.
Part 3 coming up next week.
Wonderful, God. I know that takes a lot out of you. That's a half hour, folks, of just reading out loud with full emotion involved. You're looking at listening to a true professional.
Well, obviously, when I record these, I will do it step by step. I'm not going to do it all in one sitting like this. My mouth starts getting like tongue-tied and twisted, and it's dry, and I want to drink. Like, I got to drink here. I can't drink in the middle of this. So
It's all right. You do phenomenal work.
Thank you, Adega. Thank you, Chris Persia. Thank you, guys. Pat S. says, I will not be hiring Loki to narrate the audiobook version of my romance novel I'm writing. You ready for round 2, baby? Oh, yes. Time for a cold one after work. Psychodorf 9. Absolutely. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
We miss you in the mornings, bud.
Yes, we do. We miss you in the morning, brother. Absolutely. Every time I see Gun Bunny, I give you a call out, brother, because we miss you.
Which is funny. I don't know if it happens to you, but I hear of Gun Bunny, and it makes me think of two different things at the same time. Either a little fluffy bunny with a machine gun out to exterminate the entire forest, or one of these gun chicks that are half bikini with a big old M4 rifle. I don't
You know
know.
what?
They just that way.
You know what it makes me think of? That scene at the beginning of Pulp Fiction, where the what's her name's like, I love you, sweetheart, and he's like, I love you, honey bunny. Everybody, be cool. This is a robbery. And yeah, Bunny had a gun.
Yep.
Oh, hell yeah, Dave Bob. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me and Adega. We are going to do part 3 of Journal of a Psychopath next week. I will be getting part 1 and part 2 up as soon as possible. I'm going to work on part 1 this weekend. I need at least a couple hours of peace and quiet to record it and possibly add sound effects. Maybe. I don't know. We might do something like that. It would be cool if we could do something like that. And I have a whole suite of stuff to do that with. So, yay. Yay me. All right. Guys, we're out of here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Me and Dave Bob, we'll be back tomorrow morning with the weekend review. We're going to talk about Blizzard. We're going to talk about Lord of the Rings. We'll talk about everything that's happened this week. What do you got coming up, Adega?
Same old stuff. Another chapter of my book. It's funny to watch. Certain aspects of it, people are. It just. I'm floored that people like what I'm doing now, more than everything else that I've done. It seems so. Yeah, I'll be doing that with Fat Steven on Monday. And as a side note, I don't know if you guys know Bear Nerd Fun on Saturday. I have to look up the time. He's doing kind of a memorial stream for V Star. She used to be in our streams quite a bit. She told me an awful lot that she was my biggest fan of my writing. We did a lot of chatting on Discord and Twitter, and just a wonderful person. And she passed away, and very few of us knew about it. It was in November, and I just found out a day ago. So for those of you who do want to give your regards to the community, because she was a touching lady, and I'll miss her. That'll be Saturday on Bear Nerd Fun's channel.
Absolutely. I will see if I can get a link to that and throw it out in the morning. Definitely, if you guys can be there, please pop in, pay your respects. Absolutely. We are out of here, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. Have a great one. Be excellent to each other. Always speak friend to enter. And we will catch you guys next Thursday.
Good night.
I can find the right button.
Yeah.
Later, everybody.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.